I want to talk about the book, and it's fascinating the timing of this book. Maybe we start with why you wrote it, and also what caused you to go personal, because you're quite vulnerable, Candace, about your childhood, and I had never heard you tell these stories because you are usually talking about policy, facts, what we need to do. I think you shy away from talking about your background sometimes, and yet you decided to put that front and center in this book. It's right in those first few chapters. I'm listening to the Audible right now. Thank you for doing the voice on it, by the way. And was that an intention of you to put yourself out there?
Yeah, I have, you're correct. In the past, I've kept my family stuff deeply close to my chest because I'm very protective of my family. And I realized that I made a conscious decision to go into politics, but it doesn't mean that my family has made a conscious decision to become a public figure. And that transition period has been very hard for them. It's a weird thing to log on to the internet and people are debating your sister, your cousin, your niece, and calling her, hoping she dies. My sisters actually just logged off completely. They just don't even do social media because it just became too much. But I had also realized that in being silent about where I came from, I had allowed the media to spin a narrative that just wasn't true. I had some people who thought that I grew up as a wealthy girl in Connecticut, and people that thought, oh, she joined the Republican Party after being a Democrat because the money was there. So just, complete foolishness. I've never actually ever voted for a Democrat candidate. I will be able to, when I die, say I was always a Republican and a conservative. I just was liberal when I was young, like many people are, and was fortunate enough to figure things out before I cast my first ballot. But I wanted people to see where my heart is on a lot of these issues. I'm not saying these things because I think it's popular, because I think it's trendy, but because the realizations of these truths saved my life. And I guess I want to be able to save the lives of other people. I want them to see, no, I've lived through things that were, classified as racism. I've lived through this. I've never said, for example, one of the worst lies about me on the internet is Candace says racism doesn't exist. That couldn't be further from the truth. And yet it gets printed once and people keep reprinting it and they just say Candace says racism doesn't exist. And yet she suffered through this hate crime in high school. And that was something that I lived through that was mine. And the media was taking it, and spinning it into something that it never was. So I wanted to tell the story myself. I wanted to say, here it is, read it. I have nothing that I've ever tried to hide about where I've come from. The reason I'm conservative is because of all of these things. And because I see how the media works and because I see how racism can be used as a theme to turn Black people into single issue voters. So it allowed me to present me for, I think, the very first time.
So true. And I've heard little bits of your story, but to now own it yourself and put it out and say, this is exactly what happened and this is how I feel. It's important to have that book, that 8 hours of audio where people can get all the way inside your head. Are you surprised how popular the book is?
Yes. So I am probably my own toughest critic. I work so hard. And I think people know that, but I don't think they realize how hard I am on myself. I really just wanted this book to be a success. Being an author was the first thing I ever wanted to be in life. Being a published author, making the New York Times bestseller list was on my bucket list that I created when I was 8 years old and put in a time capsule, like, what do you want to be doing in 30 years? And it was always be a published author, be a published author. So I just didn't know what to expect. Working with this book was a lot of back forth between what the publisher wanted and me trying to maintain being myself, and not being processed by the publisher. So it was a battle the entire way to do it. And, I won in terms of being able to keep the content that I wanted to keep. The book, even the title was a debate with the publisher. Oh, it's too strong, how Black America can make its second escape from the Democrat plantations. And I'm like, but that's what I meant, So it's my book. So if you want to sign a deal with me, then it has to be, the deal is that I get to be Candace Owens. But we have been completely blown away with the success of the book. It's incredible. I am so grateful and so honored to all of my fans, but also to the people that keep sending me screenshots on Instagram that don't like me. Just like, I want to see what Candace Owens is about, so here I go. I'm grateful to them for having an open enough mind to maybe perhaps get around the mainstream media verdict of me and to explore me on their own. But it's been the most exciting, exhausting 2 weeks of probably my entire political career.
And you say that with a smile and a laugh. And what kind of numbers are we talking about here? Like, you know, you made the New York Times bestseller list and you're selling, you know, 6 figures of books on Amazon. And like, what are some of the numbers?
I can't wait to figure out my week 2 numbers, but in week 1, in the first 24 hours, Amazon ran out of their 90,000 copies that they had ordered. So we had sold 100,000 copies in the first 24 hours, which was amazing. And then by the end of the first week, which stops, like my book came out on a Tuesday, they stopped calculating first week on a Saturday. We had sold over 140,000 copies. And so now today is when I get to figure out what week 2 is. So I'm pretty excited to see where the numbers are at. But it was, they said it was considered a blockbuster book. And I did it without any bulk buying from any groups, which is why I was so annoyed that New York Times did this petty thing and gave me a dagger for doing a live signing and signing copies with like my signature in it. So of the books, 800 of them got purchased from Premier Books, which they sign like live copies. And they decided to dagger and pretend it was bulk buys. Now people are saying the GOP purchased her books. No, not a single GOP group purchased my books. The RNC didn't purchase my books. Those were real people who bought every single one of my books. And it's a major accomplishment.